Hey guys, tonight we're embarking on a bit of a culinary journey. We're heading back in time to try one of history's first true superfoods, a cornerstone of an empire's diet. The only catch? It's basically fun scum. We're going to explore the world of the Aztecs and their love for slimy, nutritious, little green cakes made from algae. It doesn't sound appetizing, I know, and let's be honest. If you were suddenly dropped into the Valley of Mexico in 1519, your modern stomach probably wouldn't handle the water, let alone the food. You'd be a historical footnote, known for inventing Montezuma's Revenge a few centuries early. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, I'd love to know where you're listening from and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's always amazing to see how far these stories travel. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You don't wake to a rooster's crow or the sound of cartwheels. You wake to the sound of water. It's a gentle, rhythmic clapping, the sound of 1,000 small waves slapping against stone foundations and the sides of passing canoes. It's the heartbeat of your city, Tenochtitlan. Through the thin fabric covering the doorway of your family's small adobe home, you can hear the murmur of early morning commerce, a distant vendor shouting the quality of his fish, the low chatter of women on their way to the market, the piercing cry of a hare unsearching for its own breakfast. You roll off your woven reed tate, the mat cool against your back, and the air that greets you is unique in all the world. It's a complex perfume, a mixture of damp earth, night minus booming flowers from the nearby floating gardens, and the faint, ever minus present scent of the great Lake Texcoco itself. It's the smell of home. Stepping outside, you are not on a street, but on a narrow stone walkway bordering a canal. The water, shimmering in the pearly light of dawn, is the true strait here. A neighbor glides past in a dugout canoe, his paddle dipping silently into the water, the boat laden with fresh pottery to be sold at market. In the distance, rising above the flat rooftops of the city, is the colossal silhouette of the Templo Mayor, the great twin Minas pyramid at the sacred heart of the city, its temple still shrouded in morning mist, and framing the entire scene, the majestic, snow-minus-capped volcanoes, architected and satirically, watch over the valley as they have for eternity. This is the greatest city you have ever known, a sprawling, water-minus-bound metropolis teeming with life. Hundreds of thousands of people live here, a population so dense it rivals or even exceeds the great cities of Europe at this time. How many, exactly? That's a question that will doctor future historians crazy. Some will argue for a population of 200. Zaro others will claim it was closer to 400. Zeroth, they will debate it for centuries. But for you, it is simply underwhelmingly alive. You are an island city, connected to the mainland by 3 massive stone causeways, but your life is lived on the water. Your home, like most, is built on a man-made extension of an island, a testament to your people's ability to tame the lake and build a paradise where none should exist. But this aquatic world has its own unique sensory signature. As you breathe deep, you catch another note in the city's perfume, something less romantic. Underneath the scent of flowers and lake water is the faint, sharp tang of human waste and household refuse, which is collected daily by barges. It's not overwhelming, just a constant, low-level reminder of the sheer number of people living so closely together. It's a strange, niche detail, but this mixture, the beautiful scent of floating gardens, the clean smell of water, and the underlying hint of a massive, living city is the true, unvarnished smell of Tenochtitlan. Your mother calls you from inside. Breakfast is ready. You turn back, and the comforting aroma of toasted maize from the comel, the clay griddle, fills the air. But there's another smell mixed in with it. Something else is on the menu this morning. Something savory, slightly swampy, and intensely green. It's the smell of tecuitlatl. Your breakfast cake, made from the scum of the lake, is waiting. You enter the single, small room of your home, and there it is. Your mother is kneeling by the comel, the flat clay griddle that rests over the fire pit. In one hand, she holds a stack of warm, fragrant maize tortillas, the true staff of life. But on a small clay plate beside them sits your other breakfast. It's a small, square cake, about the thickness of your finger. Its color is a deep, murky green, the color of the lake on a cloudy day. It's flecked with a few toasted sesame minus like seeds and a sprinkle of coarse salt. This is tecuitlatl, which literally translates to stone excrement, a rather unglamorous name for something so vital. You sit down on a low reed stool, and your mother hands you the plate. The aroma is unique. It's not a fresh, vegetable smell. It's heavier, more savory. There's a faint, swampy undertone. But on top of that is a surprisingly rich, almost cheesy scent. It's a smell that will cause the first Spanish visitors to wrinkle their noses in confusion, with one chronicler, Bernal Díaz del Castillo, later describing it as a kind of cheese they made and sold in the markets. He wasn't far off. The smell comes from the concentrated amino acids, creating a powerful umami quality. Think, your mother says, her voice gentle but firm. It will make your bones strong. You break off a piece of the cake. Its texture is dense and slightly spongy, like a firm bread. You wrap it in a warm tortilla, the way it's meant to be eaten. The bland, comforting taste of the maize is the perfect vehicle for the intense flavor of the tecuitlatl. You take a bite. The taste explodes in your mouth, incredibly savory, salty, and earthy. It's like tasting the lake itself, but concentrated 1,000 times over. It's not a flavor you would call delicious in the way that ripe mango or slow minus roasted turkey is delicious. It's a functional flavor, a taste that speaks of pure, unadulterated sustenance. It's the food of survival, the bedrock of your diet. This is the cornerstone of your people's nutrition, a point mainstream history often touches upon. The Aztec diet, while rich in maize, beans, and squash, but below in complete protein. This green cake, made from spirulina algae harvested from the lake, was a solution. It was a powerhouse of protein, vitamins, and minerals, a true superfood that allowed a massive population to thrive in a place with very little land for grazing animals. It was, in many ways, the green engine that powered the Aztec Empire. You chew thoughtfully, your personal feelings about the taste long ago replaced by a simple acceptance. This is food, this is strength, but you sometimes wonder, as you look at your humble meal, if everyone eats this way. Does the great speaker, the Tlatelolco himself, wake up to a plate of green scum? Or does he dine on venison from the royal hunts and cocoa brought all the way from the hot lowlands? This question reflects a genuine debate among historians. What was the social standing of tecuitlatl? Was it a poverty food, a cheap and abundant protein source for the common people, while the nobles ate more luxurious fare? Or was it a staple for all classes, valued for its nutritional properties by everyone from the lowest farmer to the highest priest? Archaeological evidence and Spanish accounts are ambiguous. It was sold widely in the markets, suggesting it was common, but its unique properties may have been prized by all. The truth is likely complex. Perhaps it was a daily staple for you, that a gourmet ingredient for a noble, prepared with expensive chilies and rare spices. You finish your cake and tortillas, washing them down with a drink of cool water from a clay jug. You feel the energy from the meal almost immediately, a warmth spreading through your limbs. Your mother is right. It makes you strong. You don't have to love the taste to respect the power it gives you. The meal is over. The sun is higher in the sky now, its light filtering more strongly into the room. The sounds from the canal outside are growing louder, more urgent. The day's work is calling, and for you, the work is inextricably linked to the very meal you just finished. You are not a farmer or a potter. You are a harvester, and your crop is waiting for you out on the shimmering, green surface of the lake. The last bite of your green breakfast cake is still a savory memory on your tongue when the sound arrives. It's a deep, resonant blast, a sound that is both a note and a vibration, rolling across the canals and waterways of your neighborhood. It's the call of the Texcoco, the conch shell trumpet. It's not the grand, ceremonial trumpet from the Temple Omeya, but a smaller, local one, run by the head of your Kalpulai, your local neighborhood association. It's the signal. It's time to go to work. You grab your simple tools, a long pole of lightweight wood, a finely woven mesh net attached to a wide wooden frame, and a large, shallow clay bowl. Your father, who taught you this trade, gives you a nod of approval as you head for the door. This isn't just any job. It's a specialized, inherited craft. Not everyone can harvest the tecuitlatl. It requires specific knowledge of the lake, a delicate touch, and a strong back. Your family has been doing this for generations. You step out onto the narrow causeway and head towards the communal dock where the harvesters' canoes are kept. Others are emerging from their homes, all carrying the same distinct set of tools. You are a guild, a fraternity of green miners come skimmers. You exchange quiet greetings, nods of acknowledgement. There's a sense of shared identity, a quiet pride in your unique and vital role in the city's complex economic web. You reach the dock and find your canoe, a simple, sturdy vessel carved from a single log, its surface weathered by years of sun and water. It's not a fast boat for long minus distance travel. It's a stable, wide minus bottomed work platform, perfect for the calm waters where you'll be working. You carefully place your tools inside and, with a practice shove, push off from the dock, your paddle dipping into the cool, dark water of the canal. You join a small flotilla of other harvesters, your canoes moving in near minus perfect unison through the city's liquid streets. The traffic on the main canals is already dense. You navigate around large, slow minus moving barges laden with stone for new constructions, nimble boats carrying merchants to the great market, and even a highly decorated canoe transporting a stern minus faced priest on his way to a temple ceremony. It's an intricate, unwritten dance of water traffic, and you move through it with an instinct born of a lifetime on these waters. As you paddle, you chew on a small piece of dried chili, a habit you picked up from the older harvesters. They say the spice helps cut through the swampy smell of the harvest and keeps the senses sharp. It's a small, practical piece of folk wisdom, a trade secret that will never be recorded in any codex or historical account. It's the kind of lived detail that gets lost to time, the small human adaptations to a unique way of life. The question of how specialized labor was organized in Tenochtitlan is a fascinating one for historians. The Kalpulai system is a key part of the puzzle. Was it a clan based on kinship, a guild based on trade, or a ward based purely on geography? The answer, still debated by academics, seems to be a complex blend of all three. Your experience reflects this. You live with your family, work in the same trade as your father, and are governed by a local leader, all within the same neighborhood structure. You are part of a well-oiled social machine, your role clearly defined and essential to the functioning of the whole. As your small fleet of canoes leaves the residential canals and enters the wider expanse of the lake, the city of Tenochtitlan spreads out around you in all its glory. It is a breathtaking sight, a vast, geometric city of white minus, plastered buildings and lush green gardens, seemingly floating on the water, all under the watchful gaze of the distant volcanoes. It is a city born from a prophecy, a city built by the will of the gods and the tireless work of human hands. And you, a humble harvester of green scum, are an essential part of its story. You are on your way to reap the gods' pantry, to gather the strange, miraculous food that allows this impossible city to exist. The maze of city canals gives way to the open water, and the world expands. Behind you, the magnificent city of Tenochtitlan seems to rise from the lake like a dream, its white temples and pyramids gleaming in the morning sun. The sounds of the city, the shouting vendors, the crying children, the barking dogs fade into a gentle hum, replaced by the whisper of the wind across the water and the rhythmic calls of waterfowl. You are on the vast expanse of Lake Texcoco. To an outsider, this would look like wilderness, a huge, shallow body of water surrounded by distant, purple mountains. But you don't see wilderness. You see a garden, a pantry, a carefully managed resource. Your people did not settle on this lake. You entered into a partnership with it. You know its moods, its secrets, and its zones. As you paddle further from the city, you guide your canoe towards a specific area. A part of the lake the fishermen avoiding the reed-cutters ignore. This is your territory. You can tell you're getting close by the way the water changes. It loses its brownish clarity and takes on a deeper, greener hue. The air begins to change, too, carrying a faint, sulphur-y smell, like the hot springs far to the south. It's the smell of your livelihood. It's the smell of the tecuitlatl bloom. This is a key piece of your people's environmental genius, a mainstream historical fact often simplified in the telling. Lake Texcoco is not one uniform body of water. It is a system. Near the city and its freshwater springs, the water is sweet, and this is where the famous China palms, the floating gardens, are built. Their muddy banks producing the city's vegetables. The further out, in the basin center where you are headed, the water is naturally saline, too salty for maize or beans to grow. But this salty water is the perfect environment for the spirulina algae to thrive. You are a farmer of the salt water, just as the China Empire is a farmer of the sweet. You paddle across an invisible line. The water beneath your canoe shifts from the freshwater that supports the city's gardens to the brackish, alkaline water that supports your crop. How is this separation maintained? You know the stories. Generations ago, the great poet minus king of the city of Texcoco, Nizahatakoi, engineered a massive dike, a 10-mile long wall of stone on earth that stretches across the lake. The official purpose, the one everyone knows, was to control the devastating floods that used to plague Tenochtitlan. But the old men who work the lake, they argue about its other, perhaps secret, purpose. The king was wise. One will say, he built the dike not just to stop the floods, but to protect the sweet water for the farms from the salt water of the basin. Another will scoff. No, the king was a pragmatist. He wanted to save the city from drowning. The fact that it helped separate the waters was just a happy accident, a gift from the gods. This debate, whether the dike was a work of brilliant ecological engineering or a flood barrier with a convenient side effect, is one that will echo in the halls of scholars for centuries to come. They will never agree, because the true intent is locked in the mind of a long-dead king. Now you are truly in the harvesting grounds. The water here has an almost oily sheen, and the green color is so intense it looks like paint. You see flocks of specific birds, small, long-legged waders that you only find in this part of the lake. They feast on the brine shrimp and other tiny creatures that thrive in this unique, algae-rich environment. They are your guides, a sign that the harvest will be good today. You let your canoe drift to a stop. You are in the heart of the god's pantry. It is not wild. It is a designated field, a pasture of algae. You look around at the other canoes of your guild, each finding their own space in the vast, green expanse. You take a deep breath of the sulphur-stinged air. To others, it might be an unpleasant smell. To you, it is the smell of wealth, of strength, of light. You reach for your tools. The time for paddling is over. The time for skimming has begun. You steady your canoe, the equal eye, with a slight shift of your weight. It rests slow and stable in the water, a perfect platform for the delicate work ahead. The time for paddling is over. Now, you must become a part of the lake, as still and patient as the herons that stalk the shallows. You reach for your tools, the instruments of your unique craft. First is the pole, a long, surprisingly light shaft of wood, sanded smooth to prevent splinters. At its end is a wide, rectangular frame, like an open window. Across this frame is stretched your most valuable tool, the net. It's not a fishing net, with its wide, open knots. This is a net of incredible fineness. The gaps in the weave so small they can barely be seen. It's woven from the tough fibers of the Megi plant, an Ayuxtihali net, but it has been treated with a special, secret process. Your father taught you how to do it. You boil the net in a mixture of water and the sap from the noble cactus, which coats the fibers in a thin, waterproof layer. This treatment prevents the net from becoming waterlogged and heavy, and it protects the delicate fibers from the corrosive salt of the lake. This is a trade secret of the harvesters, a piece of practical magic that makes your work possible. An untreated net would become a useless, heavy rag within a week. This one will last for years. Now the work begins. It's a dance of patience and precision. You stand carefully in the center of your canoe, finding your balance. You take the long pole and dip the fine mesh net into the water. You don't plunge it deep. You skim it just below the surface, where the algae has formed a thick, green, almost creamy foam. You push the net forward with a slow, steady motion. It's not a fast scoop. Speed is your enemy. If you move too quickly, you will break up the delicate foam, scattering it into the water where it will be lost. You must move at the speed of the lake itself. A calm, gliding push. As you move the net, the fine mesh allows the water to pass through. What it captures the thick, green slime. You guide the net through a particularly dense patch of the bloom, watching as the frame fills with a vibrant, emerald-green sludge. It collects in a thick, quivering mass. The smell, that familiar savory, swampy scent, intensifies. When the net is full, you lift it slowly, letting the excess water drip, 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 back into the lake. This is the patience bar. Lifting too soon means a watery, low-quality harvest. You wait, holding the heavy pole steady. Your shoulder muscles are already beginning to feel the familiar ache. Once most of the water has drained, you perform the most delicate step. You turn the pole end carefully. With a practiced flick of the wrist, you tip the contents of the net into the large, shallow clay bowl that sits in the bottom of your canoe. The green slime slides off the slick net with a soft, satisfying SCH loop sound. You have harvested your first scoop of the day. You repeat the process. Skim, lift, drain, tip, skim, lift, drain, tip. It's a slow, hypnotic rhythm. Your world is reduced to the green water, the feel of the pole in your hands, and the growing pile of green goo in your bowl. It's not exactly a high-octane job, but, as you work, a question that future historians will vigorously debate floats in your mind. How big is this operation? Really? From your canoe, you can see a dozen or so other harvesters, your neighbors, all engaged in the same slow dance. But are you the only ones? Are there other guilds, in other parts of the lake, doing the same thing? Is this a small minor scale, artisanal food source, a cottage industry run by a few families? Or is it a massive, state-managed enterprise, with hundreds, maybe thousands, of harvesters working every day to produce the vast quantities of protein needed to feed the spawning capital? You don't know the answer. Your world is your calpuli, your neighborhood. You know your own production, but you have no concept of the empire's total gross domestic product of algae. The priests and the lords of the city, they know. They are the ones who manage the granaries and the markets. But to you, it's just your family's work. The academic argument over the scale and economic organization of the tecuitlatl industry will never be fully resolved, because the records are lost, and the view from a single canoe is always limited. For now, you don't worry about it. Your bowl is getting full. The sun is climbing higher, its heat beginning to beat down on your back. The slow, patient work continues, one scoop of green gold at a time. The rhythm of your work is hypnotic. Skim, lift, drain, dip. The pile of green slime in your clay bowl grows steadily higher, a testament to your patience. The sun is now directly overhead, its heat intense, reflecting off the water with a blinding glare. You pull the brim of your woven palm-leaf hat lower to shield your eyes. The only sounds are the lapping of the water, the distant cries of birds, and the soft SCH loop as your fellow harvesters empty their nets. Suddenly, a new sound cuts through the tranquil air. It's a low, rhythmic drumming, accompanied by the high, clear notes of a flute. It's coming from the direction of the city. You and the other harvesters pause, your poles resting in the water. You all know what this sound means. You turn and see it. A magnificent vessel, far larger than any working canoe, is gliding towards your harvesting grounds. It's a royal barge, a massive canoe built for luxury and speed, propelled by a dozen powerful paddlers moving in perfect, synchronized strokes. The barge itself is a work of art. Its prow is carved into the fierce, snarling head of a jaguar. Its sides are painted with intricate geometric patterns in red and gold, and a canopy of brilliantly dyed cotton, adorned with shimmering feathers, provides shade for its passengers. This is the shadow of the king, or as you call him, the tecuitlatl, the great speaker. As the barge draws closer, you can see the figures beneath the canopy. You see high-ranking nobles in elaborate feather headdresses and priests in their stark black robes, and in the center, seated on a low throne draped with jaguar pelts, is a figure of immense authority. It is likely not the Tlatelolco himself who rarely leaves the palace grounds, but a close relative, a member of the royal council, or a powerful visiting dignitary from a vassal state. Your immediate reaction is one of ingrained deference. You and the other harvesters instinctively guide your humble work canoes to the side, clearing a wide path for the royal procession. You lower your head, avoiding direct eye contact, a fundamental sign of respect. To stare directly at a high noble is an act of profound insolence, a challenge to their authority. Your world, for all its beauty and ingenuity, is built upon a rigid and unforgiving social hierarchy. This social structure is a core concept for understanding your civilization. At the top is the Tlatelolco and the royal family. Below them are the high priests and the noble classes, the tecuitlatl, who are warriors, judges, and administrators. Then there is a burgeoning class of wealthy merchants, the Pocteque, who control long-distance trade. And then there is everyone else, the commoners, the maize who all tend. Like you are the farmers, the artisans, the builders, the backbone of the empire. You have rights and belong to a calpole, but your social mobility is extremely limited. You were born a harvester, and your children will be harvesters. As the royal barge glides past, you catch a glimpse of the nobles' faces. They look out at you and your green, slimy work with expressions of detached curiosity, as if observing an interesting but alien species of insect. To them, you are a part of the landscape, a functional component of the great machine of the empire, but not a person one would ever speak to. In that brief moment, the vast social chasm that separates your lives is laid bare. They live in stone palaces. You live in an adobe hut. They eat food prepared with exotic spices. You eat the scum you pull from the lake. You are both citizens of Tenochtitlan, but you inhabit different worlds. A strange thought occurs to you, a bit of gallows humor you might share with your friends later. What if a bit of your slimy harvest accidentally splashed onto their pristine white robes? The idea is so absurd, the consequence is so unthinkable, that it's almost funny. It's a small, silent act of rebellion in your mind, a way to cope with the immense power imbalance. This is the kind of detail about class tension, the silent observations and private jokes of the common folk that official histories, written by the elite, will never capture. The barge passes, the sound of its drums and flutes fading as it heads towards the mainland. The brief interruption is over. The moment of pageantry and power has vanished, leaving only ripples in the water. You and your fellow harvesters slowly guide your canoes back to your positions. The shadow has passed. You look down at the green goo in your bowl. This is your reality. You pick up your long pole and return to the slow, steady rhythm of your work. The king has his duties, and you have yours. The empire needs both. The sun begins its long, slow descent towards the western mountains, and the earth starts to lose its searing heat. Your clay bowl is now heavy with the day's harvest. A quivering, deep-green mound of algae. It's time to head back. You and the other harvesters turn your canoes and begin the paddle back towards the city. But you're not heading for your home dock. You are heading for a specific, designated shoreline, the communal drying grounds. As you paddle, an older harvester, a man named Tucker, whose face is a permanent mask of sun-baked twinkles, glides his canoe alongside yours. He sees you looking at the water, a thoughtful expression on your face. You're wondering why it only grows here, he says. It's not a question, but a statement. You nod. You know the practical reason is salty water, but you also know there is always a deeper story, a story of the gods. Tucker smiles. showing gums stained from years of chewing coca. The sweet water is a gift from Tlatelolco, the great rain god. It gives us maize and beans. But this water, he gestures with his chin to the green expanse. This is a different kind of gift. This is the pantry of Tlatelolco. He tells you the story, a tale you've heard in pieces but never so clearly. Tlatelolco is the elder sister of the rain gods, the Tlatelolco. She is the goddess of salt and salty water. The story goes that, in a fit of anger, her younger brothers cast her out, banishing her to the salt pans. But, instead of despairing, she invented the process of salt extraction and became the patron goddess of salt minus makers and, by extension, of you. She wept salty tears into the lake. Each talker says, his voice taking on the rhythmic cadence of a storyteller, and where her tears fell, the tecuitlatl grew. It is her special food, a food that cannot grow in the sweet waters of her brothers. It is a sign of her power, a reminder that even that which is cast out can create life. This is the cosmological explanation for the ecological reality you inhabit. The science of salinity and algae blooms is understood through the language of mythology, of divine family squabbles and sacred tears. To your people, there is no contradiction between the two. The gods work through the natural world. The saltness of the water isn't a chemical property. It's a manifestation of Tlatelolco's divine essence. Each talker then shares a more obscure, technical piece of lore, but even the goddess has her preferences. He says, lowering his voice, the harvest is always best after a full moon, when the tides of the lake are highest and stir her spirit from the depths, and it is always worst after a strong east wind, which pushes the sweet water from the canals too far into her domain. This is a fascinating mix of folk science and religious belief. Are these observations empirically true? Do the lunar tides and wind direction actually affect the algae bloom in a predictable way? It's entirely possible. This is the kind of traditional ecological knowledge, passed down through generations of observation, that modern science often dismisses at first, only to find a kernel of truth in it later. The link between the bloom and the moon will be a subject of intense debate for future marine biologists studying your lake's ecosystem. A debate that started as a quiet conversation between two canoe-bound harvesters. You arrive at the drying grounds, a flat, sun-drenched expanse of land near the lake shore. It's a place of intense activity. You beach your canoe and, with the help of a friend, carefully lift the heavy bowl of green slime and carry it ashore. The ground is covered with hundreds of flat, square clay tiles, all laid out in neat rows. This is where the transformation happens, where the wet, smelly sludge becomes the dry, stable food cake you eat for breakfast. It's a simple but brilliant form of food preservation. You take a wooden spatula and begin to spread your harvest onto several empty tiles. The key is to get the layer perfectly even, not too thick and not too thin. A thick layer won't dry in the center and will rot. A thin layer will burn to a crisp in the sun. It's a skill that takes practice. You work alongside the others, spreading your green paste under the hot afternoon sun. The air is thick with the swampy, briny smell of the drying algae. You look at the vast field of green coated tiles, a strange patchwork will baking in the sun. This is the secret to your city's survival. Laid bare, it is a gift from a salty goddess, harvested with secret knowledge, and preserved with the simple, powerful magic of the sun. You finish spreading the last of your slimy green harvest onto the clay tiles. Your work on the lake and at the shore is done for the day. You leave the tecuitlatl in the care of the sun, the great transformer, which will bake it over the next day into the solid, transportable cakes that are the currency of your trade. After cleaning your tools and securing your canoe, you head home, not with an empty stomach, but with an empty basket. The next morning, however, is a different story. You return to the drying grounds to collect your finished product. The wet, green paste has been transformed. Under the relentless sun, it has solidified into thin, brittle sheets of a deep, dark green. You carefully peel these sheets from the tiles and break them into neat, square cakes. This is your wage. This is your merchandise. This is what you will take to market. You load the dried cakes into a large, woven basket, which you strap to your back with a meat-cap awl, a TUM line that rests across your forehead. A simple but effective technology that allows you to carry immense weight. Then, you join the endless river of humanity flowing towards the heart of the empire's commerce, the great market at Tlatelolco. Tlatelolco was once a rival city-state, but it was conquered by Tenochtitlan and its massive marketplace was absorbed, becoming the economic engine of the capital. Getting there is a journey in itself. A walk across the crowded causeways and through the teeming streets of the city. The noise is overwhelming, a cacophony of 100,000 people talking, laughing, bartering, and shouting. When you finally arrive at the market plaza, the scene is one of breathtaking, organized chaos. It is vast, larger than any public square you can imagine, and it is packed with tens of thousands of people. The Spanish Conquest authors who will one day see this place will be utterly stunned by its scale and organization, with Hernán Cortés himself writing that it was twice the size of the city of Salamanca, with over 60 thorough people buying and selling daily. The market is not a random jumble. It is meticulously organized. There are specific aisles for each type of good, overseen by market judges who ensure fair trade and punish cheaters. You walk past the section for vegetables, a riot of color with its piles of red tomatoes, green avocados, and yellow squash. You pass the pottery section, with its neat stacks of clay pots, plates, and figurines. There's an aisle for butchers, selling domesticated turkeys, ducks, and even the hairless dogs, the zooxytensible, that are raised for meat. Your destination is the section for grains and prepared foods. Here, amongst the vendors selling bags of maize, beans, and amaranth, you find your spot. You unroll a reed there. Carefully arrange your dark green tecuitlatl cakes in a neat stack. And wait, you are not the only one. There are several other vendors selling the same product. Your neighbors and rivals from the guild. You watch them, and they watch you. Who has the best looking cakes today? Whose are the driest, the most perfectly square? A quiet competition plays out. A woman on her way home from the textile section stops at your mat. She picks up one of your cakes, examines it, and sniffs it with a critical air. You know what she's looking for. She's checking for the rich, almost cheesy smell that indicates a high protein content, and ensuring there's no hint of a rotten, fishy smell that would mean it was harvested from a bad part of the lake or not dried properly. How much for 10? She asks. Now the bartering begins. But you do not use coins. Your people have no currency in that sense. Your economy is a complex system of barter and equivalence. The most common form of money for small transactions is the cacao bean, the precious seed from which the bitter, frothy chocolate drink of the nobles is made. 30 beans, you reply. 20, she counters, scoffing at your price. 20 minus 5, you offer, and I will throw in a handful of salt. She considers, then nods. The deal is done. She counts out 20 minus 5 precious cacao beans from a small cloth bag, and you give her 10 of your green cakes and a small scoop of salt from a gourd. This transaction, this specific exchange rate of tecuitlatl to cacao, is a fascinating economic detail that will be lost to history. Economists will debate the exact value of goods in the Aztec Empire for centuries, but the living, breathing reality of it is happening right here on your mat. You watch the beans disappear into your own pouch. They represent a successful day's work. With these, you can now go to the bean cellar and trade for your family's dinner, or perhaps save up for a new clay pot or a cotton blanket. You are a small but essential cog in a vast and vibrant economic machine, turning the scum of the lake into the very stuff of life. The market at Tlatelolco is a theater of human life, and from your humble mat on the ground, you have a front-row seat. You watch as people from every walk of life cast by farmers in simple loincloths, artisans with clay-stained hands, and stern-faced warriors bearing the scars of distant campaigns. Then, you see a figure that makes you sit up a little straighter. It's a nobleman, a pilloi, his status obvious from 100 paces. He wears a magnificent cloak, a Tlatelolco, woven from fine cotton and embroidered with the symbol of his lineage. His earlobes are stretched with large plugs of polished obsidian, and a piece of precious green jadeite pierces his lower lip. He is followed by a servant, who carries a large, empty basket. The nobleman is not browsing the common goods. He walks with a purpose, his eyes scanning the stalls with an air of discerning taste. He stops near your section, and your heart beats a little faster. To sell directly to a noble is a rare and profitable event. He ignores the other vendors and walks directly to your mat. You lower your eyes in deference as he approaches. He does not speak to you. He speaks to his server, but his words are meant for you. See if this one has any of a decent quality, he says, his voice calm and authoritative. The servant crouches down, with far more reverence than the common woman from earlier, picks up one of your cakes. He inspects it, then breaks a tiny piece off and, shockingly, places it in his own mouth. He chews it for a moment, his expression unreadable. This is a practice you've only seen with the very wealthy. They have their servants act as food tasters, a precaution against both poison and poor quality. The servant swallows and nods to his master. It is pure, my lord, from the good waters. The nobleman gives a slight, almost imperceptible nod of satisfaction. Acquire a month's supply, he commands. He does not barter. He does not ask the price. He turns and continues his stroll through the market, confident that the details will be handled. The servant turns to you. The lord will take 100 cakes. 100. That's more than you usually sell in 3 days. You quickly stack the green squares, but the servant does not offer you cacao beans. Cacao is for commoners. For a transaction of this size with a noble, a different form of currency is used. The servant reaches into a pouch and pulls out several tecuitlatl. These are standardized lengths of white cotton cloth, woven to specific dimensions and qualities, which serve as a high denomination of currency. They are used for major purchases, paying tribute, or in this case, for a nobleman's grocery run. He hands you 3 pristine lengths of cloth. The value is immense. With this, you could buy a new canoe, or enough maize to feed your family for half a year. As you are concluding the transaction, you grow bold enough to ask the servant a quiet question. Forgive my impertinence, but how does the great lord enjoy his tecuitlatl? The servant, perhaps pleased with the quality of your product, deigns to answer. The cooks will grind it into a fine powder. He explains. They will mix it with ground chilies, roasted tomatoes, and the petals of the squash blossom. It is served as a sauce over fresh fish from the sweet Minas water lakes. You listen in awe. A sauce. You have only ever eaten your tecuitlatl as a plain, dry cake wrapped in a tortilla. The idea of transforming it into a complex, flavorful sauce, an accompaniment to another dish, is a level of culinary sophistication you can barely imagine. It's like someone telling you that the simple stones you walk on could be ground into dust and mixed with pigments to create a beautiful paint. This is a crucial insight into Aztec cuisine that many historical accounts miss. They focus on the staple ingredients, but often overlook the vast difference in their preparation between classes. The tecuitlatl was not just one thing. For you, it was a survival food. For the noble, it was a gourmet ingredient, a base for creating complex flavors. The same green scum was part of 2 entirely different food cultures existing in the same city. This gap is something scholars still struggle to fully comprehend when they read accounts of Aztec feasts with dozens of complex dishes. They often debate whether these represent the daily reality for anyone or just the spectacular. One-off feasts of the super-rich. Your brief interaction at the markets suggests the truth is somewhere in the middle. The wealthy didn't necessarily eat different ingredients, but they ate them in vastly more elaborate and refined ways. The servant leaves with his basket full of your cakes. You are left sitting on your mat, holding the valuable bolts of cloth, your mind reeling with the thought of chili minus tomato minus spirulina sauce. You have fed a noble, and in doing so, you have glimpsed a world of flavor that lies far beyond your own. The market buzzes around you, but your mind is stuck on the nobleman's sauce. The idea that your humble green cakes could be transformed into something so elegant is a revelation. It makes you look at your product with new eyes. You've always thought of it as food, pure and simple, but maybe it's more than that. Later that afternoon, as the market crowd begins to thin, another group of interesting customers approaches your section. They are not warriors or nobles. They are artisans, identifiable by their paint-stained hands and the intense, focused look in their eyes. They are Tlatelolco the scribes, the painters of codices and the decorators of temple walls. They are the keepers of your people's stories and sacred images. They move from stall to stall, not inspecting the tecuitlatl cakes for their flavor, but for their color. One of them, a young man with a serious expression, stops at your mat. He picks up a cake, but instead of sniffing it, he holds it up to the sun, squinting at the quality of its greenness. "This is a good, deep color," he says to his companion, an older, more experienced painter. "No brown tin, harvested at the right time." He turns to you. "I am not buying to eat," he says, stating the obvious. "I need the pigment. I will give you 20 cacao beans for your 5 darkest cakes." You agree to the sale. Entry. You have heard rumors of this, but have never seen it firsthand. The idea is so strange to buy food not for the stomach, but for the eyes. As you count out the cakes, you are asking, "Is it a good color for painting?" The older painter answers, perhaps sensing your genuine curiosity. "It is a difficult pigment," he says, his voice raspy. "It is not like a mineral. It fades in the sun. It is not strong. But," he adds with a faint smile, "it has a life to it that you cannot get from ground stone. It is the color of the lake, the color of the new maize shoots, the color of the quetzal feather. It is the color of life itself." He explains that to turn your food cake into paint, they will grind it into the finest possible powder. Then, they will mix this green dust with a bind of the sticky sap from an orchid bulb or a special glue rendered from animal hides to create a liquid paint. This paint will then be used to fill in the green sections of their murals and codices, to paint the skin of the water goddess or the leaves of the world -3. This is an incredible piece of Aztec technological ingenuity, a fascinating and obscure fact that highlights their resourcefulness. They use the same natural product for 2 completely different purposes, nutrition and art. They were, in effect, painting with protein. But the painter also hints at a controversy, a debate within his own guild. Many of the old masters refuse to use it, he says, gesturing to the green cake. They say it is a fleeing color, that a sacred image should be made of eternal things, like jadeite dust or malachite. They believe using a foodstuff as a pigment is improper, that it confuses the world of the stomach with the world of the spirit. He shrugs, but we younger painters, we see its value. We believe the life minus force in the tech. Tecuitlatl gives the painting a special power, even if it does not last as long. This is a classic debate between tradition and innovation, a conversation that happens in every culture throughout history. Should art be made of permanent, noble materials, or can it be made from the ephemeral, everyday stuff of life? The fact that your humble spirulina cake is at the center of such a high-minded artistic and philosophical debate is astounding to you. The painters take their 5 green cakes and depart, leaving you to ponder this new dimension of your work. You are not just feeding the city. You are not just providing a gourmet ingredient for the rich. You are, in a small and indirect way, providing the very color of life for the sacred stories of your people. You look at the remaining stack of tecuitlatl on your mat. You think of the nobleman's sauce and the painter's pigment. The same object holds so many different meanings, so many different values, depending on whose hands it falls into. It is food. It is currency. It is a luxury ingredient. It is a controversial art supply. What is it, really? You are beginning to realize that the answer is not in the object itself, but in the culture that uses it. The tecuitlatl is a mirror, reflecting the complexity, the ingenuity, and the internal debates of your magnificent, water-bound world. Your day at the market concludes. You've traded your green cakes for a pouch full of valuable cacao beans and a few essentials for your family. the journey home feels lighter, your basket empty, your spirit full of the strange new ideas the day has presented. To get back to your neighborhood, you don't walk the crowded causeways. Instead, you pay a small fee, a single kakeo, beyond to a ferryman, who takes you on a more direct route through the canals and his wide, public canoe. This route takes you past a part of the lake system you rarely see up close, the legendary China palms, the so-minus called floating gardens. As your canoe glides through the network of wide canals that separates them, you look on in quiet wonder. They aren't truly floating. Of course, they are man-minus made islands, triumphs of hydraulic engineering. To build one, your ancestors drove rectangular fences of wattle stakes into the shallow lake bed. They then filled this enclosure with alternating layers of mud dredged from the bottom of the canal and decaying vegetation. The result was a plot of incredibly fertile, self-minus irrigating land, a kind of permanent, rectangular compost pile rising from the water. On these China palms, everything grows with an almost supernatural vigor. You see neat rows of maize stalks, their green leaves rustling in the breeze. You see squash vines sprawling across the dark, rich soil, their bright yellow blossoms a splash of color. You see tomato plants heavy with red fruit and chili bushes dotted with fiery peppers. At the corners of each island, willow trees have been planted, their dense root systems acting as natural anchors, holding the man-minus made land together. You look at this scene of incredible agricultural abundance and can't help but compare it to your own work. The China Empire, the farmer of these gardens, works with mud and earth. His hands are always dirty. He fights against pests and weeds. His work is tied to the soil. Your work, by contrast, is clean. You work on the open water. Under the wide sky, you don't plant or weed. You simply harvest what the lake provides. You are a gatherer, while he is a cultivator. It's a fundamental difference in approach to the same lake environment. This comparison raises a question that future agronomists and historians will study with great interest: which system was more important to the survival of Tenochtitlan? The China palms are more famous, a celebrated wonder of the Aztec world, producing multiple harvests a year and feeding a huge portion of the city's population with fresh vegetables. But their output, while impressive, was mostly carbohydrates. Your work, the harvesting of tecuitlatl, provided the critical, high-minus quality protein that was otherwise scarce. So which was more vital, the muddy gardens or the green skull? It's a false choice. Of course, the two systems were not in competition. They were complementary, to brilliant and parallel solutions to the problem of feeding a massive city in an aquatic environment. The China palms were the bread, and your tecuitlatl was the cheese. The city needed both to survive. As you glide past one of the gardens, you see the farmer and his family at work. He is using a long wooden spade to dredge mud from the bottom of the canal and slop it onto his garden, replenishing its fertility. His wife is meticulously picking insects off tomato plants. It looks like hard, back-minus breaking labor. You feel a strange, and perhaps unwarranted, sense of superiority. Your work is more elegant. It requires patience under delicate touch, not brute strength. A China emperor would be lost on the open water, his heavy minus-handed movements clumsy and inefficient. And you, in turn, would be hopeless in his muddy field, unsure of when to plant or how to weed. You are both masters of your own domains, specialists in your own kind of farming. Then you see something that makes you smile. At the edge of the farmer's China Empire, growing on a specially constructed trellis, are squash plants, and their bright yellow blossoms are open to the sun. You are reminded of the nobleman sauce, the one made from your tecuitlatl, tomatoes, chilies, and squash blossoms. The very ingredients for that gourmet dish are growing right here, in this muddy plot. It strikes you that your two worlds, the open-minus water harvesting of the East Lake and the China Empire farming of the South Lake, meet on the plate of a nobleman, a man who has likely never set foot in either place. The thought is both absurd and profound. Your canoe leaves the China MPA district behind and heads back into the familiar canals of your own neighborhood. You are home. You may not be a celebrated gardener of a floating island, but you are a harvester of the lake's secret bounty, and you know your work is just as vital. For weeks, the rhythm of your life has been perfect. The sun rises, you eat your green cake, you paddle out to the lake, and you skim the thick, rich algae from the water. The harvest is good, the sales at the market are steady, and your family has enough kake, or beans to trade for what you need. The world feels stable, predictable, but you live at the mercy of the gods and the weather, and that stability is about to be broken. It begins subtly. The sky, usually a brilliant blue during this season, becomes a hazy, milky white. The air grows thick and heavy with a moisture that feels unnatural. And then, the rains come. Not the usual afternoon thunder showers, but a relentless, week-long downpour. The kind of deluge that Telco, the rain god, unleashes when he is in a particularly foul mood. The canals of the city swell, their waters rising to lick at the edges of the stone walkways. The great Lake Texcoco, usually so placid, becomes a choppy, angry sea. The work of harvesting, of course, stops completely. It's impossible to balance in a canoe on the bucking water, and the rain washes away any algae bloom that might try to fall. You and your family are confined to your small home, listening to the endless drumming of rain on the roof. At first, it is a welcome rest, but as the days stretch on, a quiet anxiety begins to build. This is not all. Finally, after what feels like an eternity, the rain stops. The sun returns, weak and watery at first, then with its old familiar intensity. A great sigh of relief passes through the city. The floods were kept at bay by the great dikes, and life can return to normal. Or so you think. A few days later, you and the other harvesters paddle back out to your ancestral harvesting grounds. But something is terribly wrong. The water is not the familiar deep, soapy green. It is a murky, diluted brown. The sulfur-white, salty smell is gone, replaced by the bland, earthy scent of fresh water. You dip your net into the water, but when you pull it up, it is empty, save for a few stray bits of debris. The tecuitlatl is gone. The panic, cold and sharp, begins to set in. The massive influx of fresh rainwater from the downpour has diluted the saline part of the lake. The delicate ecological balance has been thrown into chaos. The water is no longer salty enough for the spirulina algae to thrive. Hixathotzul's pantry is bare. You spend the day paddling frantically across the harvesting grounds, searching for any small patch of green that might have survived, but you find nothing. The other harvesters are doing the same. Their movements no longer common rhythmic, but anxious and jerky. The mood is one of growing despair. This is a catastrophe. It's not just a week of lost wages. Your entire livelihood has vanished overnight. And it's not just a personal problem. If the tecuitlatl doesn't grow back, the entire city will soon face a severe protein shortage. The price of beans and turkey will skyrocket at the market. Famine, a specter that always haunts even the most prosperous civilizations, has suddenly appeared on the horizon. This event highlights a critical vulnerability in the Aztec food system, one that historians and environmental scientists will study closely. While brilliant, the system was highly specialized and depended on a stable oxwintry environment. Any major ecological shift, a prolonged drought, a volcanic eruption that changes the water's chemistry, or in this case, a massive flood of fresh water could bring the whole thing crashing down. The Aztecs were masters of their environment, but they were not immune to it. The question that now grips your community is a terrifying one. Is this a temporary setback, or a permanent change? Will the lake's salinity return as the excess fresh water slowly evaporates onto the sun? Or has some fundamental balance been broken forever? No one knows. The elders argue, their faces etched with worry. Some claim to have seen this happen in their grandfather's time, and that the lake will heal itself in a moon or two. Others shake their heads grimly, muttering that the rain was a punishment from the gods, a sign that a great transgression has occurred. The scientific answer, whether the lake's ecosystem is resilient enough to bounce back, is a matter of intense debate. But for you, the question is much simpler and more terrifying. When you return from the empty lake, your mother looks at the breakfast table. There are tortillas, but the small plate where the green cake usually sits is empty. What will we eat? She asks, her voice a quiet whisper. For the first time in your life, you do not have an answer. The days that follow are filled with a heavy, anxious quiet. The comforting morning ritual of eating your green cake is gone, replaced by a meager meal of tortillas and salt. The daily rhythm of paddling out to the lake has ceased. You and the other harvesters are men without a trade, lingering on the docks, staring out at the useless, brown water with a sense of profound loss and impotence. The failure of the harvest is no longer a private problem for your guild. It has become a crisis for the city. At the Tlatelolco market, the price of other proteins, beans, turkey, fish has already begun to climb. The mood of the entire city has soured. The usual vibrant energy has been replaced by a low hum of fear. The city's engine is missing its fuel. After a week of inaction and growing panic, the priests decide that the matter can no longer be left to nature. The gods are clearly displeased. A divine intervention is required. The Tlatelolco himself decrees that a great ceremony will be held to appease the gods of water and salt. On the appointed day, a solemn procession wends its way from the great Templo Mayor to the shores of the lake. It is not a festive parade, but a somber affair. At the head of the procession are the priests of Tenochtitlan, their bodies painted black, their long, matted hair clotted with ritual blood. They swing censers filled with burning copal resin, the thick, sacred smoke billowing into the air. Behind them come the priests of Tenochtitlan. In contrast to the fearsome Teleka priests, they are adorned in white robes, wearing necklaces of seashell and carrying ceremonial objects related to salt production. Their presence is a rare sight in the city's heart, as Tenochtitlan is a more specialized, regional deity. Today, however, our role is critical. You and the other harvesters are given a place of honor in the procession, right behind the priests. It is a strange honor, born of desperation. You are the living symbols of the crisis. You carry your useless nets and empty bowls, your faces grim. The procession reaches a massive stone pier that juts out into the lake. A great crowd has gathered, their faces a mixture of piety and fear. The high priest of Tenochtitlan climbs a temporary altar and begins a powerful invocation, his voice booming across the water. He is begging Tenochtitlan to forgive the people for any transgression and to restrain his watery power, to allow the sun to do its work. Then, the high priestess of Tenochtitlan steps forward. She begins a softer, more melodic chant, a lament for her lost domain. She speaks to the goddess as a daughter speaks to a mother, asking her to restore her salty tears to the lake, to allow the sacred food to grow once more. Now comes the offering. This is the heart of the ceremony, the transaction with the divine. Several young men, chosen for their strength and purity, carry heavy sacks to the edge of the pier. These sacks do not contain maize or gold. They contain salt, not the coarse salt from the lake, but fine, white, crystalline salt, brought at great expense from the coastal salt flats hundreds of miles away. It is an offering of immense value. One by one, the priests take the sacks and, with a great, dramatic heave, pour the precious salt into the murky water. It is a direct, literal attempt to salinity the lake, a perfect fusion of practical action and religious ritual. Are they performing a chemical experiment or a sacred rite? To your people, there is no difference. They are physically giving the goddess back the essence of her being. But then comes a more controversial part of the ceremony, a detail that illustrates the complex and often debated nature of Aztec religion. To truly appease a powerful god, a blood offering is often required. A small, beautifully crafted altar is brought forward. A priest holds up a magnificent turkey, its feathers iridescent in the sun. With a swift motion of an obsidian knife, the bird is sacrificed. Its blood spilled into a ceremonial bowl and then poured into the lake. The use of sacrifice is one of the most misunderstood aspects of your culture. While the Spanish and later historians will focus on large-scale human sacrifice, the reality was a complex spectrum of offerings. For a crisis of this nature, The sacrifice of a valuable animal like a turkey, a creature associated with sustenance, was considered appropriate. The academic debate will rage for centuries: was this a deeply felt religious necessity, or a form of cynical political theater, a way for the priests to demonstrate their power and control a panicked population? The grim, sincere faces of the priests suggest they are true believers, but the palpable relief that spreads through the crowd shows the ceremony has powerful social function. After the offerings, the final, strange ritual occurs. A group of children, all born to harvester families, are brought forth. They are given tiny, toy-sized nets and balls. They stand at the edge of the pier and mimic the actions of skimming the algae. It is an act of sympathetic magic, a child's game transformed into a sacred prayer, calling for the return of the real harvest. The ceremony is over. The crowd disperses in a mood of cautious hope. You walk home, the smell of copal smoke still clinging to your clothes. You have done all you can. You have worked, you have waited, and now you have prayed. The fate of the lake, and your own fate, is now in the hands of the gods. The days after the great ceremony are tense with anticipation. Every morning, you and the other harvesters walk to the shore and stare at the water, looking for a sign. For a week, nothing changes. The water remains a disappointing, murky brown. A quiet despair begins to creep back into the community. Perhaps the gods were not satisfied. But then, one morning, you notice it. A subtle shift, a faint green tint at the edges of the water, a whisper of the color you thought you had lost forever. The next day, it is a little stronger, and the day after that, stronger still. The sun, beating down day after day, is finally evaporating the excess fresh water, and the lake's natural salinity is slowly, painstakingly reasserting itself. Hixithatort is healing. A great, collective sigh of relief ripples through your guild, and then through the city. The prayers, it seems, have been answered. The system is resilient. During this waiting period, with no harvesting to be done, you are assigned a different task. A runner, Pnai, is preparing for a long journey to a rebellious province in the east, and his support team needs an extra hand. These runners are the nervous system of the Aztec Empire, a network of highly trained athletes who can relay messages in small packages across vast distances with incredible speed. You watch in awe as the runner, a young man your age but with a lean, weary physique that looks like it's carved from stone, makes his final preparations. His only clothing is a simple loincloth. He carries no weapons, only a small pouch at his side and the message from the Tlatelolco, encoded in a painted scroll. Your job is to help prepare his provisions. And what is the food chosen to fuel this imperial messenger on his arduous, multi-day run? Not heavy maize cakes or bulky dried meat. His primary fuel source is a small, tightly wrapped parcel of your tecuitlatl cakes. The head of the runner's team, a stern faced veteran, explains their value. Maize is good, but it is heavy in the stomach. He says, the tecuitlatl is different. It is light, but it burns with a hot, clean fire. It gives a runner the endurance of the serpent and the speed of the eagle. This is a revelation. You always knew your green cakes made you strong for a day's work on the lake, but you never thought of them in these terms. This is high performance fuel, an ancient energy bar. This is a mainstream historical fact that is often cited but rarely explored in detail. The Aztec understanding of nutrition was incredibly sophisticated. They knew that different foods had different properties and were suitable for different tasks. They were, in effect, practicing sports nutrition centuries before the term was invented. You learn another fascinating detail. The cakes prepared for the runners are slightly different from the ones you sell at market. They are mixed with a paste of ground amaranth seeds, another protein-rich superfood, and a small amount of crushed coca leaf. The coca is not enough to be a powerful stimulant, but it is believed to help with endurance and altitude sickness as the runner climbs into the high mountain passes. This special, high-energy blend is a state secret of the Messenger Corps, a custom-designed food for a specific, critical purpose. The runner's journey is a marvel of logistics. He will not run the entire distance himself. The imperial roads have small relay stations, or tecuitlatl. Every few miles, he will sprint at top speed to the first station, where another runner is waiting, already warmed up and ready to go. He will hand off the message, and the new runner will sprint to the next station. By this method, a message can travel over 200 miles in a single day, faster than a horse could manage over the same terrain. As you hand the runner his small, precious packet of food, a question enters your mind that will be a point of some academic curiosity in the future. Was the tecuitlatl a standard part of every runner's diet, or was it a specialized food, used only by those on the most important or arduous routes? Given its high value and the recent scarcity, it seems likely it was reserved for the most critical missions. The average runner on a routine route might have to make do with toasted maize and beans. This suggests a tiered system of nutrition even within this elite corps, a detail no history book will ever record. The runner gives you a nod of thanks, his face a mask of intense focus. He takes a deep breath, speaks a short prayer to the god of roads, and then he is off, his bare feet slapping against the stone causeway as he accelerates to a blistering pace. You watch him disappear into the distance, a lone figure carrying the will of the emperor, fueled by the scum of the lake. You look back towards the slowly greening water with a new sense of pride. You are not just feeding the city's bellies, you are fueling its armies, its diplomats, its very coherence as an empire. Your humble, slimy harvest is the secret ingredient that holds your world together. The lake is healing, the familiar green sheen has returned, and with it, the rhythm of your life. The morning conch shell sounds its call. Your canoe glides across the water, and your net once again fills with the thick, savory algae. The crisis is past, and a sense of normalcy, more precious now than ever before, settles over the city. One evening, after a long but successful day of harvesting, you sit with your friends on a stone pier, your feet dangling in the cool canal water. The mood is light, celebratory. You are sharing a large gourd of algae, a fermented Maggie sap that is the common person's drink of choice. That's milky, slightly sour, and makes the world feel warm and forgiving. As you drink, the familiar, age-old argument sparks up, the kind of friendly debate that has likely been happening among harvesters for generations. What does tecuitlatl really taste like? It is the taste of strength, says your friend Tipo, a broad shouldered young man who always takes a practical view of things. I don't care if it tastes like mud or honey. I eat it. I feel strong. That is all I need to know. It is the taste of a full day's work. But Kimi, a young woman known for her sharp wit and skill in weaving, scoffs at this. You have no poetry in your soul. Tipo, she says, laughing. You can't say it just tastes of strength. It has a flavor, and that flavor is punishment. A few of your friends chuckle in agreement. It is the taste of duty, she continues, warming to her theme. It is the flavor of what you must eat, not what you wish to eat. The gods gave us mangoes and sweet sapotes to show us what joy tastes like. They gave us tecuitlatl to remind us that life is hard work. This conversation, light-hearted as it is, touches on a profound and universal human experience, the concept of an acquired taste. Tecuitlatl is not inherently delicious. Its appeal is not immediate. It is a flavor that is deeply intertwined with culture, necessity, and identity. You eat it because you are from Tenochtitlan, because you are a child of the lake. Its flavor is inseparable from its meaning. An older harvester, listening in on your conversation, offers his own perspective. You are both wrong, he says, his voice raspy from years of shouting over the water. It is not the taste of strength or of punishment. It is the taste of wealth. He explains, when I was a boy, after the great drought, the tecuitlatl failed for a whole year. We ate nothing but thin maize gruel. We grew wheat. When the lake finally healed and we ate our first green cake, it tasted richer than any turkey, sweeter than any honey, because it was the taste of survival, the taste of having enough. You young ones, he says, a hint of accusation in his voice. You have had it your whole lives. You take it for granted. You have forgotten what true hunger tastes like. His words cast a brief, sobering pall over the group. He is right. The recent crisis was a scare, but for his generation, it was a memory. The taste of something is shaped by the context in which you eat it. This is a point that food historians will grapple with for centuries. When they read the accounts of the Spanish, who described the tecuitlatl with words like cheesy but also slimy and strange, they struggle to understand its true place in the Aztec palate. Was it a beloved delicacy? A tolerated staple? A poverty food? The answer, as your conversation reveals, is yes. It was all of these things. Its taste was not a fixed property, but a subjective experience, shaped by an individual's age, experiences, and even their mood on a given day. There was no single, objective taste of tecuitlatl. You take another sip of octli and think about your own opinion. What do you think it tastes like? You decide it tastes of familiarity. It is the first savory food you tasted as a child and the food you have eaten almost every morning of your life. It doesn't need to be delicious or punishing. It is simply the taste of home. It is the flavor of being yourself, a harvester, a citizen of the greatest city in the world. The debate moves on to other topics: the upcoming festival, the skill of a particular weaver, a recent scandal involving a minor priest. The argument is unresolved, as it always is. You look out at the dark water of the canal, where the reflection of the rising moon shimmers on the surface. You know that tomorrow morning you will wake up and eat your green cake, and it will taste, as it always does, exactly like itself, and for that you are grateful. The seasons turn once more. The lake remains healthy, a reliable source of life and sustenance. Your work continues, its familiar rhythm a comforting constant in a world that is quietly beginning to feel less certain. The changes are small, like ripples from a stone dropped far away, but they are starting to reach the shores of your island city. The source of these ripples is the great market at Tlatelolco. It is not just a place for trade. It is the city Castillo, a place where news and rumors from every corner of the vast empire converge. And lately, the news has been strange. You are at your usual spot, trading your green cakes, when you overhear a conversation between Tenochtitlán, the long-distance merchants who are the masters of the empire's trade routes. They are speaking in low, urgent tones, their faces etched with a mixture of excitement and concern. They have just returned from a perilous, year-long journey to the hot, humid coastal lowlands, the land of the Maya and the two Tenochtitlan peoples. They are there, one of the merchants says, his voice barely a whisper. We saw them with our own eyes. They have come from the Eastern Ocean on houses that float on the water. The other merchant nods grimly. Their skin is pale, like a corpse's, and the hair on their faces grows thick and wild, like a beast's. They are talking, of course, about the Spanish. At this point, they are just a small, exploratory expedition led by a man named Hernán Cortés, a strange and unsettling presence on the coast, but not yet a direct threat. To the merchants, they are a new and unpredictable variable, a potential source of both immense profit and immense danger. You listen, fascinated and a little unnerved. The world you know is large, but it is finite. You know of the fierce Tlaxcala who are your people's sworn enemies, the Terrascans to the west who have never been conquered, and the myriad of vassal states that pay tribute to your Tlatelolco. But people from beyond the Eastern Ocean, it's a concept so alien it's difficult to grasp. It's like hearing a story about men who live on the moon. The first merchant continues, and the strangest thing, they have animals with them, great, hornless deer that they sit upon hand-dried like the wind, and others, huge, snorting beasts with curly tails. He is describing horses and pigs, creatures utterly foreign to your world. This conversation highlights the critical role of the Tenochtitlan as the empire's intelligence network. Long before the Tlatelolco's official ambassadors made contact, these merchants were gathering the first crucial information about the newcomers. Their reports, a mixture of fact, exaggeration, and cultural misunderstanding, would have been the first intelligence briefs that landed on the desk, or rather, the reed mat of Moctezuma II. The accuracy of these initial reports and how they were interpreted by the Aztec leadership is a point of intense historical debate. Did they see the Spanish as gods, as invaders, or simply as a new and powerful tribe to be dealt with? The story began here, as whispers in the marketplace. The merchants move on, and you are left to ponder their strange tale. You mention it to your friend Tipo, who is selling his own cakes at a nearby mat. He laughs it off. Men with hair on their faces who ride on giant deer? You scoff. It is just a story the merchants tell to make themselves seem more important. They probably saw a strange tribe of barbarians and are exaggerating to get a better price for their coastal trinkets. You are inclined to agree. It all seems too fantastical to be real. Then, a comical thought strikes you, and you voice it to Tipo. Can you imagine what these bearded men would do if you offered them a tecuitlatl cake? You both erupt in laughter at the image. You picture one of these pale, hairy men, wrinkled nose and all, being presented with your savory green scum. The thought of his revulsion, his confusion, his utter inability to comprehend what he is seeing is hilarious. It's a small, satisfying moment of cultural superiority. Whatever strange beasts or floating houses they might have, they would surely be defeated by your breakfast. It's a joke, a way to domesticate the fear of the unknown, to shrink these strange apparitions down to a manageable, comical size. This moment of humor, born of ignorance, is deeply poignant in hindsight. You are laughing at the very people who will, in a few short years, bring your entire civilization to its knees. You are underestimating them in exactly the same way they will underestimate you, by judging them through the lens of your own cultural norms and, specifically, your food. The Spanish, for their part, will be equally disgusted and fascinated by your diet. Their chronicles full of descriptions of the strange things you eat. This culinary clash is a small but telling part of the larger, tragic story of the Conquest. For now, it is just a joke. You and Tipo share another laugh. Then turn your attention back to the familiar business of the market. The strange whispers from the coast are a momentary distraction, a curious tale to be told at home. You have no idea that the ripples from that distant shore are about to become a tidal wave, one that will wash over your magnificent city and change your world forever. The years pass. The strange whispers from the coast grow louder, more urgent, finally coalescing into a terrifying reality. The bearded men did not go away. They marched inland, forging alliances with your sworn enemies, the Tlaxcala and Es. They arrived at the gates of your magnificent city, not as humble visitors, but as conquerors. Your world, once so stable and eternal, has been turned upside down. The story of the Conquest is a brutal, complex epic of war, disease, and betrayal, a story that will be told and retold for centuries, each side with its own version of the truth. But for you, it is not an epic. It is the terrifying, confusing, and tragic collapse of your everyday life. You are much older now. The strength that once propelled your canoe across the lake has faded, replaced by a weary resilience. You have seen things you never thought possible: the flash of steel swords, the roar of cannons, the terrifying tower of men on horseback. You have seen the great Temple Omeya, the sacred heart of your universe, desecrated and torn down. You have seen your people, once the proud masters of the world, decimated by a strange new sickness, smallpox, that swept through the city like a vengeful god, killing with an efficiency that even Aztec weapons could not match. The great city of Tenochtitlan has fallen. It is now being rebuilt, but not as the city you knew. It is becoming something new, the Spanish colonial capital, built directly on the ruins of your own. The canals are being filled in, the pyramids dismantled to provide stone for new churches. The very landscape of your memory is being erased. You still live by the lake, but the lake itself is changing. The new masters of the city do not understand its delicate balance. They see the seasonal floods not as a natural rhythm to be managed with dikes, but as a nuisance to be eliminated. They begin the long, slow process of draining the Great Lake system, a monumental feat of engineering that will take centuries but will ultimately destroy the unique aquatic environment that sustained your people. And what of your trade? What of the tecuitlatl? In the chaos and the aftermath of the Conquest, the organized harvesting has collapsed. The guild is scattered. The drying grounds lie abandoned. The demand at the market has vanished, replaced by a new economy based on new foods and a new currency. One day, out of a habit you can't quite break, you take a small, old canoe and paddle out onto the lake. You head for your ancestral harvesting grounds. The water is still there, still green, though perhaps less vibrant than you remember. Ixtitzoutli's pantry is still full, but no one is coming to eat. The goddess still offers her gift, but the people have forgotten how to receive it. You look down into the water, and as your canoe drifts, you see the history of your people in its very layers. You see the deep, dark mud of the lake bed, the foundation of your world. You see the clear, salty water, the source of your unique sustenance, and floating on top, a thick, green layer of algae, the tecuitlatl. Your life, your trade, your culture, it is all still there, a living cross-minus section of the world that was. You think of the generations of your family who skimmed this very water, your great-grandfather, who told stories of the city when it was still young and consolidating its power, your grandfather, who lived through the reign of the great Tlatelolco and saw the empire at its peak, your father, who taught you the craft, and you, who lived to see it all end. You are a link in a long chain, and you are witnessing the chain break. This sense of historical sediment, of looking at all landscape and seeing its deep past, is a powerful one. Future archaeologists will do this in a more literal sense. They will take core samples from the lake bed. By analyzing the layers of pollen and sediment, they will reconstruct the environmental history of your valley. They will see the arrival of maize cultivation, the evidence of deforestation, and, in the upper layers, the dramatic ecological shifts brought about by the Spanish conquest. You are doing the same thing, but with the eyes of memory and grief. As you sit there, drifting in your canoe, a profound and difficult question arises, one that your descendants and historians will argue over forever. Did your world have to end? Was the fall of the Aztec Empire inevitable? A consequence of its own internal weaknesses, its brutal ritual sacrifices, its oppressive tribute system that made it vulnerable to outside forces? Or was your world a thriving, complex civilization, destroyed by a brutal and technologically superior aggressor? There is no easy answer. You have seen the greatness of your people, their art, their engineering, their poetry, but you have also seen their cruelty, the fear in the eyes of the tribute payers at the market. Your civilization was, like all civilizations, a mixture of light and shadow. You dip your hand into the water and scoop up a small amount of the green slime. You look at it in your palm. It is still the same. It still holds the same protein, the same life force. The food is still there, but the culture that gave it meaning, that turned it into cakes and currency and pigment and prayer, is gone. The object has survived, but its soul has departed. You let the green slime drip through your fingers and back into the water, a silent offering to a world that no longer exists. You're an old man now, a ghost in a city that is no longer yours. You live in a small hut on the outskirts of what is now called Mexico City, near the shrinking shores of the lake. Your own children are grown, living in a new world, speaking a new language mixed with the old one, trying to navigate a life that is a confusing blend of two cultures. One day, your youngest grandson, a boy with your eyes but with a Spanish name, comes to you. He has been playing near the lake shore, a place most of the city's new inhabitants avoid, considering it dirty and uncivilized. In his hands, he holds a small, dark green, sun-minus dried flea. It's a piece of tecuitlatl, naturally washed ashore and baked by the sun. Abuelo, he says, using the Spanish word for grandfather. What is this? It smells strange. You take the green flake from his hand. It is light and brittle. You put it to your nose, and a ghost of a scent, a faint echo of that savory, cheesy, swampy smell, fills your senses. It's a smell that transports you back in time, back to the bustling mornings of your youth, back to the open water of the lake under a wide blue sky, A flood of memories, so distant they feel like another man's life, rushes through you. You look at your grandson, at his curious, uncomfortable face. How can you explain it to him? How can you make him understand that this small, smelly flake was once the engine of an empire, the subject of theological debates, the fuel of messengers, the pigment of artists? You sit him down, and you begin to tell the story, not the grand, violent story of the conquest. He will hear that one from the Spanish priests, and it will be a story of glorious liberation from heathenism. You tell him the quiet, everyday story of the green cake. You tell him about the conch shell horn sounding in the dawn, a sound he has never heard. You describe the sun, gliding canoes on canals that are now filled with dirt and paved with stone. You try to explain the patient, rhythmic dance of the harvest, the feel of the long pole in your hands, the satisfying SCH loop of the algae sliding into the bowl. You tell him about the goddess Tlatelolco and her salty tears, a story that sounds like a fanciful fairy tale in this new Christian world. You tell him about the market at Tlatelolco, a place of bewildering vibrancy that has been replaced by a more orderly, but less lively Spanish Miners style plaza. You describe the system of bartering with cacao beans, a practice that now seems quaint and inefficient to a boy who understands the power of silver coins. As you speak, you realize how much of the story is untranslatable. The concepts, the worldview, the very sensory experiences are tied to a world that is gone. You are trying to describe the color blue to a man who is blind. The story becomes a legend, a myth of a lost golden age. You find yourself simplifying, smoothing over the difficult parts, the hunger, the fear, the back minus breaking labor. You are not a historian, you are a grandfather, and your job is to create a memory that is beautiful, even if it is not entirely true. This is the fate of all lost cultures. Their complex realities fade, replaced by simplified, romanticized, or demonized narrative. The tecuitlatl, once 1,000 different things to 1,000 different people, will be flattened into a single historical curiosity. A footnote in the story of the Aztec diet. The rich tapestry of its meaning will be lost. The academic debates you lived through, was it a poverty food or a delicacy, a work of engineering or a gift from the gods, will be forgotten because the culture that held those debates no longer exists. Your grandson listens, his expression a mixture of fascination and disbelief. You wait. Lakes come. Umbrella? He asks, the idea both disgusting and intriguing to him. We ate strength, you reply, using the same simple words your mother used with you so long ago. We ate the gift of the lake. You break off a tiny piece of the green flake and put it in your mouth. The taste is faint, a whisper of its former savory power. It is the taste of memory, of dust, of profound and irreversible loss. You offer a piece to your grandson. He hesitates. Then, trusting you, he places the tiny flake on his tongue. He makes a face. It tastes like dirt. You smile, a sad, knowing smile. He cannot taste the strength, the history, the divinity. He can only taste the object. The inheritance has been passed on, but it has lost its meaning in translation. You look out at the shrinking lake, a pale reflection of its former glory. You have passed on the story, the green inheritance. It is all you can do. The rest is up to the silence, and to the endless, unanswer-enable questions of the future. And so, the story of the green cake fades into the background hum of a new world. Its complex life as a food, a currency, and a color dissolve, leaving behind only a scientific name, spirulina, and the faint, lingering question of what it truly meant to the people who built a city on a lake and powered it with the sun and the scum of the water. The world you were just in, the world of canals and canoes, of savory green breakfasts and bustling markets, begins to recede. The scent of lake water and copal smoke dissipates, replaced by the familiar air of your own room. The feeling of a canoe rocking gently beneath you gives way to the solid, steady comfort of your bed. The sounds of Tenochtitlan fade, and you can hear the quiet stillness of your own home, perhaps the soft whir of a fan or the distant sigh of traffic. You are no longer in the Valley of Mexico 500 years ago. You are here, now, safe and warm. Let the gentle lapping of the lake water be a lullaby, carrying you away from history and into the quiet, peaceful waters of your own dreams. There is nothing left to do, nothing left to see. It is time to drift. It is time to sleep. The end of the article. Good night.